Yeah, it's a critical hit. What's going on, everybody? Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Arvanauts, to a Saturday night stream. It is 7:15 p.m. Eastern, and we are raring to go with episode 24 of Masters of the Dungeon, our D&D roundtable show where we talk about all things with dungeon mastering, game mastering, and the like. I hope everyone's doing well and is looking forward to a big day of streaming tonight. We are going to start with that. We will then conclude after we do the show. Then we're going to move back. I'm going to continue with some Operencia, which I started playing last night. It was awesome and great, and I can't wait to get back into that. And I can't wait to talk today with my co-host on Masters of the Dungeon, who I will introduce in just a moment. But before I do that, just a couple of reminders about ways to support the stream. Hey, Kerflop, what's up? Also, hello to Light and Passion and everyone. If you haven't done so already, please follow the channel. That is always appreciated. If you haven't done so already, please make sure to check out the YouTube with !ArvTube, where you can see past broadcasts of the stream. This is 2 full years now of Masters of the Dungeon, 24 shows. If you were to start right now, you could get an entire day's worth, at least, of just listening to nothing but Masters of the Dungeon, and it would lead you all the way through your day. So that's how you know we've got some content out there for you. So, so !ArvTube for past broadcasts of that. !Arv tweets will get you over to my Twitter, where you can retweet the stream. Please do that, because it definitely makes a difference when you retweet the stream. Please do that, and let people know about what it is that they're watching. !Arvcord is my Discord channel, where you can hang out with the Arvanauts in between streams, and you can find out about all of that on my website, arvanelleron.com, where I have just posted the tentative schedule for March, which starts, of course, tomorrow. Again, that schedule is still very tentative, still subject to lots of confirmations and schedule moves and all that stuff. So, there's still subject to change over the next week or so, as usual, but we are, close pretty much to having that, get set. So definitely check that out. I'll go over that, but I'm not going to do it now, but I will go over that schedule in a few days, so you can know what you got looking for the month of March as we head into the first month of spring that is before us. Hard to believe that we're already 2 months just about gone in the rearview mirror and heading into the third month of 2020. So again, arvanelleron.com for that. On the financial side, !Arv Shop is the merchandise area where you can get stuff for Infinity and Beyond. You can get stuff for Adventures of Middle-earth with Terry Toons illustrations, and soon you'll be able to get some Esper Genesis stuff there as well. That's !Arv Shop. !Arv Treon is the Patreon, currently sitting at $3.13. Again, I do get probably the most money directly from that, so any support people can give to the Patreon is much appreciated. Cool stuff for you, cool stuff for the channel as well, including inspirations, which will be reset tomorrow, or within the next couple days anyway. And then the last thing, of course, is the sub button. We've had a few people do that yesterday. I think we're currently sitting at about 46, 47 subs. Again, would love to see that get north of 50 and onwards. You can get a lot of awesome emotes, and you saw me posting some of the new emotes. We now have Arvin E. Blam, which is an emote that now can go Twitch-wide. If you contribute a certain number of bits, you can actually get a new Arvin E. So Good, Arvin E. So Bad. You can get all the other emotes that are there, so you get some cool stuff, as you can see Echo demoing them for you. Thank you, Echo. So yes, you can get all that cool stuff, which is available to you. Plus, of course, you can also inspire the players at a certain tier and so forth. So please consider supporting us over there. And last but certainly not least, the publishing stuff, !Icarus to pre-order my Icarus and Jelinek graphic novels. I've seen more of that in the last couple of days. They look really, really good. I'm really excited to share this to the world. That's coming out in in May, not March. The Greyshade Kickstarter, !Greyshade KS. More details about that coming soon. Again, that's been put a little bit on delay because if you haven't heard, we have a global pandemic, so we're kind of dealing with that. So China, which is where a lot of the factories are, has been almost shut down essentially for a while, or at least somewhat close to it. So we will get back on track, but in the meantime, it's more important than people live that I run a Kickstarter. So hopefully soon we will be back I'll be able to announce more details about that. And then last but certainly not least, of course, !Library, where you can order now a copy of Tales and Tomes from the Forbidden Library. You can buy it in PDF from DriveThruRPG, but it's coming soon in print as well. So schedule-wise, tonight we have got Masters of the Dungeon, then we are moving on to Operencia. As I said, on Tuesday, we have at noon Eastern our live gamebook illustration stream. We will be continuing Mines of Moria, Tolkien Quest, with Terry Toons as our illustrator, as always. And then in the afternoon, I will be finishing up with Heroes of the Monkey Tavern on GOG and Pen and Pixels. So that's what we've got going on Tuesday. And then, as I say, there's more down the line, but I'm not going to announce it all now because it's not all set, and because I want to instead introduce the awesome and amazing co-host who is not at all busy. doesn't have a busy life in the least. And that, of course, as I head over there, is Little Red Dot, who is with us and is on the mend. The world may be getting sicker with a global pandemic, but Dot is.
I've already overcome it, man.
Exactly. Well, I wonder if it's like an inverse thing. Like as you get healthier, the world gets sicker. Like, is there like a?
This is how I reign supreme.
Explains so many things. Oh my God, it's good to see you, Dot. How are you?
You too.
And how's life in the universe on your end of the world?
I'm good. Definitely, like you said, still coming around to the end of what I'm pretty sure was 5 days worth of the flu.
Yeah, great.
So that Saturday, I got up the next day, and after the last Infinity and Beyond, and the one that I left halfway through, woke up the next morning, was like, I felt like I had been hit by a truck, and that's when I went to the doctor. They're like, you have the flu and a fever. Oh, these are why you're dreaming weird things and sweating in the middle of the night. So it was just it has been a very long week, but my voice is back. I had to cancel everything this week from my life, but my voice is back. I'm feeling better, and today's my first day back to streaming since I've been sick. So I'm
we're
looking up.
We're honored to be your landing pad back on the road to recovery. And yeah, we got a busy show, but I have one thing that I want to highlight up front before we do anything, and it's just a question: have you seen the Tales from the Loop trailer that just landed? Okay. So I actually, all right, you know what? I want to watch this. I'm going to watch this on stream because we can do that. I want to watch this on stream, and I want you to watch it too. And the reason I'm doing this is I know you were a Kids on Bikes person. I know you are someone who does a lot of that stuff. Also is a fan of Stranger Things, etc. So the reason that I love this is this hits tone so well, and I saw it and immediately thought of you and of Johnny, Video Store Cowboy, who actually ran this stuff specifically. But
so Tales from the Loop is made by Free League, which is one of my favorite designers. I'm running a Coriolis campaign right now, and I love their stuff.
Yeah, no, I that's why I'm saying, like, I was like, I know this stuff. So chat, we're going to watch this together for those of you who didn't see it. I cannot imagine that they would have any problem with this because it's on YouTube. So, all right, here we go. I'm going to zoom this in. For those of you who have not seen it, so remember, Tales from the Loop started as basically a series of paintings done by this guy, Swedish artist, who was doing basically 80s plus robots, really, and then like other weird stuff. And it just sort of took off and became this phenomenon. And so now we are left with what we have here, which is it started out like this. It started out as a painting, then it became a game, and now it is going to be a show on Amazon Prime. And it was actually Video Store Cowboy who told me about this, and I was a real fan of the tone of this. So, all right, here we are. I think we're all set. Okay, so here we go. We watch together, and then I want to talk about it briefly, and then I promise we'll get into D&D things, but oh my God. All right, here we go.
What do you do?
When someone says something's impossible, I prove it's possible.
Not everything in life makes sense.
So many goosebumps.
Right?
One day, many years from now, you'll wonder if this really happened. Or if it was a dream.
Everyone is connected to the loop in one way or another.
See, there's nothing to be afraid of.
Oh my God.
Wow.
I was just like, okay, and I want to hear your response to it, but the thing that got me was it nails the tone. It's the same way I felt when I was playing the game with Johnny, where I was like, I was back in my own life in the 80s as a kid, right down to the Radio Shack that he had us go into with a Tandy computer and the whole bit, with a quirky sort of tone to it that wasn't angry or violent or I mean, like, I even thought about the guy at the end there with the robot hand who closes his hand, and I could imagine a horror version of this where he does that and then like slams his hand down or does something like that. Then that just doesn't happen. Instead, you're just left to be like, I just saw, is this Twin Peaks? Like, what is it? Like, oh my God. So anyway, I'm curious to what you think about that.
It looks fantastic. That was the first time I had viewed it. So I think it's interesting. We're getting the way that tabletop is influencing media in a different way. You know, we're getting animated shows now.
Yes.
You know, you've got The Expanse, which was based off of a home tabletop game.
Yep.
For those of you that don't know that, that TV show the writer entirely wrote it off of a home campaign that he and his friends had together.
Yep.
So it's interesting because I think tabletop role-playing games are finding a way into mass media.
Yeah.
On like a different scale. I mean, look at this.
I mean, like, that's exactly it. I mean, and the thing that got me was about how beautiful the narrative design of it is. You know, how, you know, now, yes, obviously it raises a lot of questions. If the show is nothing but just a bunch of like people looking at each other dramatically and then a violin in the background, I could see that getting old. But this is exactly what you want. It's at its best. This is what shows like Lost wanted to be. You know, this is what a show like I mentioned Twin Peaks tried to be. But because it's coming from a game perspective initially, it really shows you the way in which game narrative is flowing into these other things. And again, and how beautiful that it begins with paintings, continues with games, continues with television. Like this is it. Like this is the cross-platform stuff, if you will, that we want. So
yeah. It's very exciting.
I
have a couple people I'll send that to when this is all done.
Oh my God. Yeah, I just couldn't believe I reiterate, because that Tales from the Loop thing was one of the most extraordinary experiences I ever had role playing, because I was right in the middle of it. Now, part of it is Johnny's a very good GM and he did a very good job with it, but it's not just that. It's so beautifully rendered. It's great world building. So anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. All right, so I will stop fanboying out about it. But man, I was like, damn, and it's coming out at my daughter too, who can be sensitive to some stuff where she gets a little freaked out by things, and she was like, that's really cool. I'd like to see more of that. I don't know. I'm looking forward to seeing how the show kind of does. It'll be a nice show while we're waiting for the Mandalorian to resume. That'll be nice.
Yeah,
also.
right.
So,
2021 or some bullshit like that.
No, fall 2020. It'll be here.
Oh, I thought it was 21.
No, fall 2020. They actually already have. There's a rumor they've already renewed for season 3. And they're just doing season 2. But yeah, so. But anyway, all right. Well, thank you for indulging me. I was like, oh, I'm so excited to share it.
Yeah. And relevant. It was relevant.
And it is relevant. Exactly.
It's relevant.
It's relevant. So tell me a little bit about, now you had to cancel your streams over the last week, but I know, because we were talking about this beforehand, that you have just started up, you have either plans for or have already started up shows that you're working on.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about one of them that you're like, damn, this is the show, y'all.
Well, we just finished, I just closed out a Teens in Space campaign, which was a lot of fun, wholesome, and just, I don't know, it just felt like a teenage drama. Like it was the perfect teen space opera. I'm getting ready to start a North Sea Epilogues campaign, which is a Viking RPG. So that kicks up on Tuesday, this upcoming week. It was supposed to be this past week, but Deathbed, right? So, yes. So we're kicking up this Tuesday. I've got an all-female cast for that one. Should be really interesting. I think it's an interesting system. It's like a merger of a couple things. It is a D20 system. It reminds me a lot of Cypher in the way that like dice rolls take place, which is kind of cool. And I can talk about the game a little bit more later if we want to. But yeah, I've got that kicking up. I've got a stellar cast of ladies for that one. And, the continuation of the Coriolis campaign that I've been running over on Unmade Gaming's channel has really taken off on YouTube. And there have been just some extreme fandom that started to build around our Coriolis campaign. So that's been kind of humbling as a GM, to say the least.
Pretty awesome. And relevant, see, because ties right back to the same, all relevant. That's awesome. Has there been, was there a particular moment that has happened as of late in one of those campaigns? Like, was it the Teens in Space finale, or like something where you're like, that you want to share as a moment that you're like, this was really awesome type of thing?
I don't know. There's for those of you that have ever watched me GM, you know that I plan, but I don't do a lot of planning. I'm like a sandbox GM. We've talked about that on this show, and like how I kind of go about plotting out episodes and things is always a little different because once your players get a hold of it.
No adventure.
Nothing that you've planned. Nothing that you've planned is going to continue. So with Coriolis, I am actually running some of Free League's module content for Coriolis. In my own way, like I'm kind of picking and choosing, but I am running some of their content. And I love those serendipitous moments as a GM for the things that you do plan for. And so we had a moment a couple episodes ago where I had told all my players we're going to start doing, they had requested more time for the audience to learn about their characters. And one of my favorite ways to do that is through flashbacks or dreams or just kind of otherworldly means of storytelling instead of like real time.
Okay.
So I had all my players tell me what flashback they would want the audience to know about. Like, what is the moment in time you want us as a one-on-one GM to player to go through? And I will work them in like over the course of this. So I had one player, I have two characters that are siblings, and one of them said that the moment he wanted flashed back was the moment where he started working for the Syndicate, which of course is like the dark underground, mafia basically, to assure that his brother got into college. But he wanted his brother wanted a grant, didn't get it, into the university, and was going to be drafted into the Syndicate. And he, as the older brother, chose to be drafted in his stead and to never let his brother know. So there's always this idea of him taking care of his brother. It's a really beautiful type thing. And this is, many years past. So I knew that we were going to be doing Mike's flashback scene that night. And I knew it was actually going to be in a dream sequence as they went under cryostasis to make the jump through the portal to the next system. Okay. And so, these are the things I'm planning, right? I'm like, okay, when they jump, he'll get his dream, blah, 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 blah. Well, before that, one of the players, to him, this character, and another character needed to have like a serious RP moment. They had some personal things that they needed to work out. Okay. And one of the things that he brought up during this completely unplanned RP moment is how he's putting his younger brother in danger by making the jump through this portal. Oh. That all of his actions and everything up to this point. And so it was just such a serendipitous moment for a player, not knowing, completely unnaturally, to like drop this thing that the way that the story has built is he's putting his brother in danger, and he's a bad person because of it, and he really needs to be aware of these things. And then when he goes under cryostasis, it was basically a fever dream. It was a fear dream of the flashback coming back, and it tied in so beautifully. And there was a moment when it was all done, one of my players on screen was like, how did you plan that? And I was like, I didn't. That was like that beautiful organic moment that just happened where we're all telling the same story, so that what I had planned inevitably was just fed right into it.
Wow.
So anyways, I have to say it was a proud GM moment because I thought that I tied it all together very nicely. But I also think it was just a great moment by the cast at large. You can tell they're like really listening to each other, and we're all on the same page, and it's really making the campaign rich.
Yeah.
And believable.
Those are the best moments too, where you have a sense that everyone is collectively working together to create this amazing moment, that everyone will remember. That's a good one. The one that I would mention very quickly, I talked about this actually. I did two conferences back to back, two conventions. 2 weeks ago it was Boscone, which is the first time I'd done that one. That was actually with Carlos, who's been on the show before, who's Esper Genesis star. And then last week was Farpoint in Baltimore. And at Boscone, I had a chance to talk a little bit about game mastering and design, and to talk about narrative and stuff like that. So I was going into this, and one of the things that came up was about, how your real life campaigns are there these kind of moments that spill over into real life circumstances. So I talked about my Adventures of Middle Earth campaign where I was there was a moment where one of the characters has returned to Erebor, to the Lonely Mountain, played by Terry Toons, and she is meeting her parents, and one of her parents, her mother, is very sick. Now, her parents had basically were the nomads that kind of taught her to be a nomad. They wandered around and visited different places and gave her this sense of adventure and wanderlust and all that. And so they were used to being very hale and hearty. And when she got back to sort of see them, she was dealing with this, her mother, who was suffering from this illness, which is partially tied into the shadow of corruption that the entire land is struggling with. And part of what the party is dealing with at the end of this campaign of Wilderland Adventures is trying to seek out this spirit, the Gibbet King, which is sort of formerly a servant, is a part of the shadow that people may know from Lord of the Rings. Anyway, so when she got back and she's sort of talking to her, and her mother's kind of sickly, and and she's going through this, and I knew, and this will be Dot will identify with this, I think, because this also ties into your background. But I knew that this was powerful for Terry because she had been through something like this with her own parents. And so when the episode was over, and I was very nervous about doing it, I only did it because I was pretty confident that this was going to be something which would deepen my her understanding of her character. Terry and I are pretty good friends at this point, and we had talked about this, and she's talked about it publicly, so it's not like this is a, private, she never discusses it with anybody. And so when we were done, when she was done with this scene, which is really kind of a hopeful scene, it's a scene where she'll be able to go out and maybe take care of her mother, and she'll be able to save her, and, as she said, I at the end, I was doing a little wrap up, and I'm like, so, how did everyone feel? And she was like, well, she's like, I'm going to just go have a good cry now. And I felt awful. So at first I was like, I said, I'm sorry. And she's like, no, she's like, you bring it every time. And she said, you bring it every time. And she said, it was great. She said it was just really powerful. And both Terry and I lost our mothers to cancer. And I know exactly what that feels like. And so there was a lot of crying going on all the way around. But the reason that it was so powerful is not just that it had real life corollary, but that everyone talked about it in terms they could connect to it emotionally without it being the exact same situation, but they could identify with the emotion that brought them to this moment. And so it led to an extraordinarily powerful RP moment, which is the kind of thing that, to be clear, since this is partially an advice show, you don't do with pickup groups, you don't do with people you don't know, you don't do unless you really know, everyone that is involved. But if you do know them, and if you have a group that's been together for a long time and that has chemistry, having that group work together in this way, and everyone else just knew enough to kind of back off and just watch it happen, was a beautiful moment. So Terry did a beautiful job with that role playing, and it's very powerful. It was a moment that will stick with me for a long time. And part of it was about being willing to take a risk and being vulnerable in this way. So anyway, it reminded me when you were talking about the brothers, especially the idea of family connections and what we sacrifice and how we show someone that we love them and value them. So, it was intense. And that was very clearly the moment that stood there, for me, as I was thinking about it. And I said that, and the person next to me on the panel was like, well, Jesus, I don't know what to say now. They're like, my moment was when we killed an orc, and I was like,
I rolled a nat 20 to take his head off. Yeah,
that was great. But anyway, so. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about the subject of the day. Let's throw this out there and see where we go, because I want to ask. This is partially a segue for me into the topic of the day, which is about live streaming, and specifically what I want to ask about. I've been thinking about this because I got so many questions about this at the last convention at Farpoint about what it's like to live stream a tabletop game. And the way I want to sort of approach that with you is, you and I have both played a lot of offline games in addition to online ones, and I'm curious about whether we think live streaming improves, enhances, or harms a sort of typical TTRPG, session and campaign. And I'm curious about what the possible pitfalls are of it. So what does it bring to a role-playing experience? What does it take away from it, theoretically? How do we make it the best it can be? Because, there are many, many people now who I think have come to D&D from the experience of watching it being live streamed, and not the way that you and I both did, which is starting it out just kind of playing in basements and in college dorm rooms and stuff like that, and I'm curious about what we think the effect of something like that is. So what are your thoughts about what live streaming has done for you, and what it does for tabletop on a good and a, pro and a con way, I guess? Hey, Cover.
Well, live streaming has just allowed tabletop to become accessible to more people, right? It's not as scary when you see it in action.
Right.
But at the same time, what it has also done is added a standard to tabletop, which
Right.
didn't exist before.
The Critical
Before it
Role
was about,
effect,
right? We were supposed to get together. We're just friends. We're having some drinks. We're chilling. We're playing some games and having a good time. And who cares what happens because we're behind closed doors.
Right.
That's not the case anymore. Now there's a standard consideration for performance. There's a standard consideration for talent level, for things like accents and cosplay, which was not ever something that really my friends did. Like I might have worn like a cape and smoked from a giant Gandalf pipe sitting around a table with my friends, but now there, especially for certain streams, there's an expectation of the level of cosplay you bring.
Yeah.
Like the one, for example, that I did moments before this.
In fairness, you bring the game. Your cosplay game is you have a dominant cosplay game. Let's just be clear. All right?
I appreciate that. I really do. I really do. But at the same time, it can be considered intimidating to others that it's like, well, if I'm not at this level,
right.
should I be playing at all? And I think that is really the detriment. And I say detriment because because I do see sometimes the live performance aspect keep people away from playing. Which is why, I attempt to do Sunday Fun Days, because Sunday Fun Days are meant for anybody at any experience level to come on. Yes, we are live, but there is no expectation. And that's really one of the base kind of lines for Sunday Fun Days. But right. I think it really does change it. I hear a lot of people all the time say, oh, I'm going to start up a stream, or I want to start a podcast. What do I need to know? And I always tell myself it's not about what you need to know, but about what you expect to receive from this.
Yes.
Like if you're expecting to be the next Critical Role, that's not going to happen. Set realistic expectations, And I tell people all the time, like if this is just genuinely just you and your friends getting together to have fun, and you want to stream it to the world, that's great.
Yep.
You don't need to worry about production value, high quality role play, those kinds of things. But if you are wanting to actually be competitive in a market, it is a market. And that's a hard thing too for some people, is just the idea of like, there is competitive nature to streaming online if you're wanting to make money and make a name for yourself in the industry.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because I think you're 100% dead on about all of that. And let's talk a little bit, I guess, about are there players that we've had that, I mean, we don't need to name names specifically, but personalities that under different circumstances might have worked a little bit better. Were they not in a live environment? People that might have blossomed, for example, if they weren't dealing it, because we know that we have a demographic.
I hate to break it to everybody, but I hear this all the time as somebody that reaches out to a lot of gaming companies. Oh yeah, we'll send you all the free products you want, and you can play with the writer. Not all writers are good role players.
No.
I'm sorry. Like Burn Me at the Stake now, it is out to the general public on Twitch. Clip it if you want to,
go tweet
but
that
it's
right
the
now.
hard truth. You're asking me to put a writer at the table that doesn't come with what I'm paying other people for. And I do now pay people. That's another thing. That's a whole other conversation that could be had about paying people for role play.
I'm working on that. I want to do that so bad.
Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, there is something about a live audience. But at the same time, for people like me, I thrive off of a live audience. What has allowed me genuinely, I believe, to get to this point is not just because I love role-playing games, but because I have a training doing things in front of an audience.
Right.
I have a decade plus worth of entertainment background. And so when I'm adding that to a platform that is literally about entertainment, it is a good combination.
Yeah.
It's the chemical X to my sugar and spice. You know what I'm saying? So like, yeah. So I don't know. It's a weird place, but yes, I do think that, not everybody does well on cam. They just don't.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's why not everybody is an actor.
That's true. And that's another thing, by the way, which is interesting, is that the flip side of this, and there's some good comments. I'll get to these are excellent comments, everyone. We'll get to these in just a second.
Yeah, for sure.
But one of the things that's significant about this is, if it's done right, I have found that my non-role players, in quotes, have been able to repeatedly rise to the occasion of my actors, and people like that, because there was a general expectation that everyone is kind of working together, again, to produce sort of this common effect. So, part of that is you need to have actors whose egos are not like so enormous that they can't play nice with the other children. But but a lot of it too is just sort of a willingness to understand the collective, right? The assembly of the team. You and you know very well because you play with them all the time with Trendane and Rob. These are two people who are professional voice actors, right?
Correct.
So if people are going to go up and be like, I've got to do accents exactly the way Trend does. I mean, most people are not going to do that because he makes his living literally doing this, right? Like that's what he does. And Trent's an exceptionally good role player. Rob's an exceptionally good role player. You are an exceptionally good role player. But the thing that I want to point out is that there are a lot of people who have often talked down about their own abilities in this department who have often proven to have some of the most powerful moments. As an example of this, Saad, who also plays with this group, has often talked about like, I don't know, and it, like self-deprecating. And Saad has not only a great amount of attention to detail, but I think does stuff that he always invests himself really well into what the character would care about and not care about. He manages to be a team player while still understanding the kind of individual requirements that would be needed for his character to make sense, to have a sort of through line. And part of the reason he's able to do that is because, the characters around him, he feels like he's part of this awesome experience. But part of it is that having that variety of experience really helps so that not everyone is trying to outact everybody else, basically, that there's a kind of good kind of give and take that happens among the group. So I think you're quite right that there is the sense that not everyone has to be an actor, and that we've talked before about the critical role effect. I guess my question is, in this kind of an environment, is there a worry about, for example, playing, and I will get to the comments in chat for in a moment, but is there a question of playing to the audience, playing to the camera, that causes them, let's say, to miss moments of play or miss moments with other cast members, with other players?
I think that's actually not just about streaming online.
Okay.
I have found that it's more about the way that the channel incentivizes the audience to interact.
I got you.
Right?
Because Praetors just brought up incentives, so talk about that. Give
incentives is, in my opinion, where we rip autonomy away from the people at the table telling the story and give it to the audience, which for many channels works and is what they thrive off of. But what it also does hinder the telling of story.
Mm-hmm.
Right? In my opinion, one of the big shifts that I saw for myself coming to Twitch for tabletop is because there was a standard, at least my level of a standard of what I wanted to bring for an entertainment value. It's not that it became less about gameplay, it just became more about story.
Okay.
Right? When I'm sitting around the table with my friends, it's still about story. We still want character development, but we can dig around as much as we want. We can dig through a manual as much as we want. We can really own and gnaw on a game and dig into the kind of the raw functionality of the game. There's an aspect of the game that is loved at a home table.
Sure.
On Twitch, we're here with a 2-hour, 3-hour period of time, and we have to get a thing done. And we have to keep you entertained, we have to keep ourselves entertained, and we have to do justice to a game. So the moment story really takes a huge step upward, now we're saying, okay, we're giving you something, we're getting something, you're getting this massive story. Now here's a bunch of incentives, which means any Joe Blow that comes across with the correct dollar amount can screw that up. And do everything in their power to continue to do so. It's one of the reasons we don't have incentives on my channel, except for one bar that everybody fills together and the GM controls that bar.
Yeah.
Because it does detract from the game, and take it from somebody that ran 2 seasons of viewer games on Encounter Roleplay. Tried to run 2 seasons of games on Encounter Roleplay.
Yeah.
It is a incentive-based gameplay is something that you're never going to get at a home game. We don't ever have to worry about, and is a massive hindrance, in my opinion, in the tabletop world, but is also a moneymaker. So
yeah, it's a moneymaker, but you're right. I mean, it is definitely and Encounter Roleplay definitely does. They really go all out on that stuff. Yeah, I agree. I think one of the things that becomes a problem too is that there's. See, I mean, the incentives that we use on here, of course, is the inspiration system, and I limit those, very heavily. And I had a lot of people who, when I first started, were like, I'd like to inspire the monsters, and I'm like, no, there's not a chance in the world I'm going to do that, because if you are able to give inspirations to the players, an inspiration does not mean an automatic. I mean, a lot of ones do these, like everyone gets nat 20s. The problem with that is that that's just an automatic success, right? An inspiration doesn't give you a success. An inspiration gives you a better chance of getting one, but it does not guarantee it. And it also invests the audience in feeling like they have a certain role to play with the characters that are there. But it's limited, and I never wanted to go beyond that very kind of limited frame, because you're right. Otherwise, it just, and I remember watching some of the more nutcasey, a couple of ones that you were unfortunately having to deal with GMing, a couple of nutcasey ones where everyone's just like, I bring in this, and then we have this, and then this.
Or
big
like here,
Were
draw
Rabbit
3
shows
cards
up,
from a
or-
deck of many things, you know, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, there goes our campaign and story, and are my players even having fun anymore?
Right.
If we're giving advantage to the thing that's trying to kill them, if what you want to see is total TPK, then we need to just be running a grinder.
That's exactly right. I mean, that's exactly right. And that's the thing. Like, and doing that, you know, for sort of fun events or whatever once in a while, that's fine, but not kind of as a steady diet. And the other thing is also, and I want to refer to a couple of things that I just saw from Kale Evil and, as Prater's mentioned, has to be managed properly. I'm a goody two shoes. Yeah, I really echo, really. But the thing I want to mention about Kale Evil is I prefer the viewer experience when it's all about the story. And I want to magnify that, if I may. Because part of the thing that I've noticed about the live streaming experience is that it also highlights the pros and cons, the positives and negatives of a given system, and allows that system to either shine or not shine, depending on sort of things that come out as a consequence of it. And what you're suggesting, I think, Kale Evil, is that story and watching a story unfold is as or more important than constantly being thrown little bits of cheese like you're a rat in a maze and you have to press the bar to get the cheese to go on with the story. Like, this is not, you know, we're not a bunch of 5-year-olds. Like, the people watching this are watching it because they want to see the story unfold. And so for those people, it is frustrating as hell to constantly have to stop and be like, you know, okay, now there's an owlbear. Now the Empire State Building fell in the middle of the room, or, you know, whatever the craziness is.
Yeah, you're all dropped in Barovia randomly. And it's like, well,
what? Yeah, I mean, so
here goes my story.
exactly. And like, you don't have a chance. And it's really, in a way, almost disrespectful of the audience that is there to sort of manage for the story. And I think that's something which also comes into play with those systems that are not as good at telling stories in this context. So again, I don't want to go on an this is not anti-Pathfinder, but to be honest, there's a reason that there are not a lot of Pathfinder and practically zero Starfinder games that you can find on Twitch. It doesn't stream very well. It's very crunchy. It's very complicated, at least for people who have not played these ones before. And although, of course, you can tell wonderful stories in Pathfinder and Starfinder, no doubt, but getting to the point where you can get the mechanics out of the way to be able to tell the story is not easy for those. And that's one of the reasons why I think you see the rise of a lot of the Powered by the Apocalypse games, the Fate Core games, the games that emphasize more narrative and story, along with, of course, 5e, which was smart enough to embrace the need to try to go more in that direction than just super uber crunchy. You know, 4e was not going to be a huge streaming success, honestly, but 5e can be, because so much more of it is about kind of theater of the mind, with sometimes the emphasis on theater. So I guess,
I mean, the book itself and the first few pages of the player's hand guide, for those of you that haven't read it, clearly states that story and role play can at any point take over like mechanics. It should.
Yes.
It says it should because story is way more important than mechanics.
Way more important. And again, you know, obviously the mechanics can have, I find, feed into the story in a very interesting way oftentimes. You know, die rolls sometimes happen at just the right moments for a particular, you know, event to kind of make sense narratively or whatever. But regardless, yes, mechanics have to be sort of second to the story. And I think live streaming rewards that idea of story over mechanics. But let's sort of take, having said that, let's devil's advocate it a little bit though. Is there a danger though that by making it so much dominated by story, that you already talked a little bit about how it might privilege a certain kind of player, like the actor over others. Is there a danger that we're also going to privilege a kind of game which takes us farther and farther away from what might recognizably be a game, you know, and it becomes essentially just us sitting around a table and just improvising with each other? I don't know.
Possibly, but even our games themselves are becoming becoming less and less mechanically driven. How many times have I talked about like GM-less games on here?
Right.
Are they any less prevalent on Twitch? No, they're becoming more popular.
Yeah, definitely they are.
They're becoming more popular because they're more accessible. You know, I said this too, like, I think sometimes even D&D, which to the average gamer is an easy access point to a non-gamer is not.
Oh, sure, it can, absolutely.
Where, like, say, For the Queen is bare minimum. And what is it other than people sitting around a table improvising?
Yep, that's true. Although I agree, but counterpoint though, I tried to play For the Queen with a group of family members over the summer. And this particular group of extended family members, very smart people, bright people, very educated, etc. It was a bit of a struggle because it was so loose, and admittedly, I didn't know enough about the game myself too, but it was like they were not natural improvisers, and so there was a little bit of everyone kind of like blinking and looking at each other.
Right,
so,
now I have to answer a question?
Yeah, so now I wondered a little bit if that wasn't an example of, I agree with you entirely that it is a game that has a sort of low bar to entry, but I wonder if there's another kind of bar that we didn't take into account that if people are not used to, because like for us we can be like, oh yeah, it's like, when you're in Werewolf and you're trying to like or Mafia and you're trying to convince people to do XYZ, but like most of the populace doesn't know what those things are. Like they're like, the what?
Right.
So I guess I'm wondering about how we make it accessible in that regard. And again, to tie it back to the topic of live streaming, how do we make it so that people are not intimidated by what they see and think to themselves, my God, I could never do that. How do we approach and apply their skill set while still keeping it more story driven than, crunchy driven, which might scare them off in another way? I guess there's a needle we have to thread, between too much and too few mechanics when it comes to getting people interested in and engaged in a game. And I'm wondering how we think about doing that.
I had somebody tell me something, a hot topic, I guess you could say, one that maybe not everybody agrees with. Just like any product, your product is not going to be for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a hard thing to swallow. That's a pill that game designers and other people have to swallow, right? There is a mass majority of the populace that are never going to be gamers.
Yeah.
They don't even play board games, not Monopoly. And let's be real. For that argument to be made about these highly intelligent people sitting around a table that just have to answer questions, they'll break out a Catan and sit down and read instructions on Catan and play through a brand new game of Catan, having played it before, or Risk, or Monopoly,
but
right?
They can grab onto a manual, though, right? They can grab onto a manual and say, here, like it told me what to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, technically there's a card in For the Queen that does the same thing, right? The difference is how people's minds approach it. Right? There's what we become attached to. When there's no board game, when there's no pieces, when there's nothing but a flip of a card, it's vulnerable. And that's okay. Not all those kinds of games are going to be right for everyone. But like the fact of the matter is the average everyday person can in fact pick up most anything that's not too mechanically heavy. I mean, if you can pick up, like I said, a Risk manual and play a game of Risk with your 4 family members, you can do most tabletop games, right? The difference is the average person does not come at things from character. We all know Monopoly tells a story. We all know Risk tells a story. The difference with a tabletop role-playing game is there's a role to be played. We have a character, and character is what scares people. Personally.
Personally. I agree with you, but tell me why.
Because for, a fair share of reasons, I guess, characters require more dedication. They require more imagination. Yep. They require more vulnerability, because I'm going to possibly be somebody that I'm not. Around a table with a bunch of other people who are being people that they are not, or attempting to pretend to be people they are not.
Or if I may jump in for a second, or they may require me to be something that I actually am, and I've never
also
been willing to reveal to anybody else. Right?
Also true. That vulnerability piece is there. So, but that being said, I think we also, that there is the hard pill to swallow, right? Is the fact that we cannot convert everyone to a tabletop role player.
Yeah.
We can't. Right. In the marketing world, we say grab the lowest hanging fruit. So what I'm trying to convert is a board gamer to a tabletop role player, to somebody that already has interest in gaming. A video gamer that understands RPGs is a lot easier to bring in, because I'm used to playing character. I'm used to having stats. I'm used to understanding how to build this. But let's be real. My mother, who doesn't play board games, who doesn't put puzzles together, who doesn't even play games on her phone, is not going to be somebody that I'm converting. So I think we also have to start talking about games for the people they're actually made for. And the people that have an interest in getting involved with it, or even those people, like, let's just talk about the critter populace, right? 90% of the people that claim to be critters don't play tabletop games other than D&D, and they're only going to play the Critical Role one.
Yeah.
So is it how much conversion can actually be done? How many people can we actually convert over? And is Twitch actually doing that? I guess is really a better question. Like, is it really happening? Most of the time when I see somebody in my chat that's like, oh my gosh, I've never played this game, but I think I'm going to go out and buy it. They're already a tabletop gamer. They already have an interest in tabletop games. What they need is to see somebody else using it, having fun with it, telling a different kind of story, and then they become invested as well.
Right.
There's no way my mother is ever going to play Dungeons and Dragons or Kids on Bikes, or probably even For the Queen. Right? It's just not going to happen. So I'm not going to try to make the apple an orange. I'm just going to let it be an apple, and then I'll just go pick off the orange tree.
It's interesting because I think you're quite right. But yet there are people that maybe the way to put this is there are people who probably in a previous era would never have become gamers, would never have thought to enjoy games. But because they've had exposure to it in these ways, it means that this sort of latent love that they have for this kind of thing has kind of risen up in them, and they want to see more about it. And maybe that's something which streaming, has given them the opportunity to see, that they're like, wow, as you say, like this is really cool, but it's not something they would have necessarily known. I have a good friend actually who absolutely, as a guy who grew up in the Bronx, who was kind of salt of the earth, blue collar type of guy, really, really good guy, but and loves the games, and every game that I introduce him to, he's like, amazing, 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 amazing. This is a guy who's in his late 40s and is just like, he loves all of this stuff. And had I grown up with him, he would absolutely have been a gamer. Like, there's not even a question he would have done that. But he ran with a different crowd. It was not a crowd that would have ever been interested, in the sort of game type of stuff. And so part of what we're doing, it seems to me, is, I think you're right that we're never going to make an apple an orange, but sometimes we're trying to find people who didn't realize how much orange they have in them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they didn't realize they were an orange
until they saw this stuff actually being broadcast.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. Yeah,
so then,
it's
So then let me ask this then. And by the way, I have a little tweet posted up there about what they thought in 2014. Wizards thought, with Mike Merle saying they wanted to focus on imagination and role play because that's what makes the RPG distinct. So then, oh no, and now as I'm citing the tweet, I completely forgot the question. Oh, okay.
I was about to say, we were talking about oranges.
Yeah, talking about oranges. That's it. I wanted to talk about oranges. No. So how then have you, in many, many, many hours now, hundreds of hours of streaming and playing and gaming, how do you balance out what you need to do for your players with your need to be able to tell a story that will make coherent sense to an audience? Because as you pointed out, the story is something which, if you're just sitting around a table, everyone's sitting around, they're all doing whatever they're doing. And, you can take time and go through things, and it can be ragged and, be weird and strange, but eventually they'll get it. If you do that in kind of a streaming environment, when you have a limited space and limited time, you're presumably going to be losing some people who will be confused about what's going on. So I'm curious how much you modify, if you do, your style of GMing to accommodate that, and how do you balance those things? Explaining a rule to players that just are not quite getting a particular rule, but doing it is kind of like not the most exciting thing in the world for an audience to watch, versus being like, what, we gotta deal with the audience here, and we're not going to pay as much attention to a player having difficulty with a particular rule. So I'm curious how you balance those things.
Well, I'll say this: if you start streaming and you're the GM, you have the most responsibility at the table.
Right. Absolutely.
Period.
Yep.
You have to know the game, even if your players don't, because it is your responsibility to manage your players and the chat.
Right.
Unless you're on somebody else's channel and you've got mods and a bunch of other stuff, right? But let's be real. Like, your job is to mitigate between what your players need and what the audience needs, so that everybody's on the same page. So sometimes you have to explain a rule. My rule about explaining rules is I only explain rules that are going to be relevant for the next role, period. If they are not relevant for the next role that is coming up that the audience is going to see, it is not the time to explain that.
Right.
because the audience, even if they're new and they don't understand and they're here for, say, a literal first experience coming to watch D&D on my Sunday fun day. I've got some players that are doing it a lot, some that aren't. And if a role comes up, whether the chat asks about, I don't understand that, or my players ask, I don't understand that, if it is relevant to the next role, I will make the explanation. Because as long as it happens, the role happens, which is what we're all really waiting on, right? That's start and finish. That's closure. If I keep talking rules, I'm like, oh, but if you did this, and then you could also do this, that's where we lose people.
Yeah.
Most people don't care about the crunchy mechanics anymore. And that's the hard truth. So as the GM, it is your job to decipher information, inform your audience, keep your players on board, and make sure roles are happening regularly.
So for those who are now sitting in our audience, and of course, some of these are experienced folks themselves, but for those who are like, well, damn, I can't do all of that. How do we gently inform them that you too can do it? Like, it's possible to do. Like,
you too can do it. I mean, there are other ways. It may be beneficial to go GM on somebody else's channel so that they can manage audience and chat.
God, yeah. So they can run. Oh my God, yeah, absolutely.
Right? Like, it sounds so silly, but I think there is this idea. It's like, oh, well, I want to do a tabletop RPG, therefore I've got to start a channel. That is a misconception. I actually had a very long conversation with Johnny about this at DragonCon this year.
Okay.
We had hot wings and we had a very long conversation about this. And I told him, I was like, that's not true. There are tons of other streamers out there, other channels that have a need for content. If you have an idea that you really want to bring to the table, pitch it and let somebody else take on the responsibility of managing all the things that you don't want to. It's half, I can talk about this later, but it's half of what I'm trying to do with this incubator series, is to take the responsibility from a GM who doesn't want to worry about overlays, running OBS, managing a chat stream, all the excess that actually detracts from what you're trying to do, which is manage players and tell a story.
Yeah.
And that gets managed by me so that you can just do what you need to. And trust me, you can go back to my very first stream that I was ever a part of, my first RPG stream on my channel. It was not fancy, people. It was super not fancy. I didn't even do individual boxes for people. I just captured Zoom.
Yeah, same.
Right? That's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. I did it. It turned out all right. You have to start somewhere. So the first thing is like, just pull off the Band-Aid. Like, if you really think that you want to maintain and manage your own content, you're going to have to learn how to micromanage all kinds of things and multi-manage lots of things at one time. If that's not it, then start going and finding channels that you really like, other streamers that you think are in a place, and pitch your ideas to them.
Yeah.
I've had enough pitch to me that I am literally finding a slot for a series on my channel to give all of you a chance to do that.
Yep. I host 2 series right now. Echo, of course, is in one of them, that are not involving me at all. And I'm like, I am over the moon about it because I am tapped out in terms of how much I individually can stream. But my dream is to have this channel up more than it's down. And I would love to be able to do with tabletop. And I would love to have more content being produced basically all month long. And so that I don't have to DM. And I'm already DMing 4 to 5 campaigns. Like, I'm pretty much tapped out. But having other people jump in to do that is the best. I love being able to get other people to do that. So Dot's 100% right about this. And I love the term. I mean, that this is the power of Dot's marketing skill, but the incubator and all that. That's a great way to think about it, because we, for those of you watching who do, and I know Praetor's Reject streams and, like right there, providing new programming in my channel that I do not run, right? It's the best, right, Praetors? But the thing I want to say about that is we do have a responsibility, I think, as folks that are in this space with some presence, to be able to collectively present as good an image to the hobby, the field, the genre that we possibly can, and to be able to present an image of people who are welcoming, which is why, as you say, the Sunday Funday thing is so great. It's why I do community D&D, with my viewers, and why we have one of the things I now host is a community D&D game that I don't run. And that idea of being welcoming so that other people can do it is super useful. And by the way, for you, if you want people to pay more attention to you as a GM or a DM, if you want people to come and watch your stories, I always say that I want everyone to come watch our stuff because my players are so freaking amazing. Like, if you've been watching the stuff that Dot and the rest of them have been bringing on Infinity and Beyond, you are seeing some of the best role playing on Twitch. And I know because I've seen it. It's so good. And I think I'm just very blessed to have a lot of amazing players in all my different campaigns. And I want more people to be able to come see that. Well, part of the way that works is as more people learn that there's more content here, they come and see more shows, and then they come and see more stuff, and then the channel becomes hopefully more bigger and more impressive, hopefully, and even more, and then the Patreon increases and the subs go up, and then I can afford to pay more people for more stuff and whatever. That's kind of the way that things work. But in the process of doing that, part of what I'm also hopefully trying to model, and I know Dot does the same thing, is the importance of running a strong and connected and compassionate community. It's a community centered on story. It's a community centered on tabletop role playing, but it is a community. And so bringing in people who are not necessarily just actors or not necessarily just, people who have spent 10 years on a stage, etc. That's also important to be able to get a chance for other people to come on board. And as Dot says, just kind of rip the Band-Aid off and get one's feet wet. And so that's one of the reasons that I find this interesting. I think in general, live streaming has been a great boon to what we do. I think in general, but there are drawbacks that can come about when people sort of turtle up and don't want to reveal themselves and don't want to be vulnerable or start playing too much to the audience and not enough to each other. And so those are some of the things you need to be aware of. But otherwise, I think it's really valuable to be able to kind of explore and sort of show what we do to a larger audience and be able to hopefully grow the community in the way that we want for our own individual stuff.
Yeah.
So,
and yes, it is causing an evolutionary shift, literally, in the way games are made and played and shared. But if it means more games are being made, more games are being shared, the industry is growing, and we have a more diverse industry than before. It is worth it. It makes Twitch an asset and not it doesn't detract from anything. It just doesn't.
Yeah. And absolutely increasing the sort of diversity that's available to you, which is the other thing too. That's the power of the internet also, right? I mean, we can have literally international games are possible to be done this way in a way that would not have been able to have been done when I started playing back in 1983. I
remember begging a group of dudes at Georgia Tech to let me in on their game. It was one of the worst experiences of my life when I first moved to Atlanta because I didn't have anybody else to play with. And now here I am, thanks to the internet, I'm able to run an all-female campaign of something. That is something that even just that at that level could never have imagined getting that many women together at one table that all have the similar interests as myself.
I didn't have enough women living on my block. Because that was it, right? I had to be like a 5-block radius. How many people can get here and actually play a game with me? So yeah, I mean, I think in general it's been a strength, but I guess what we would say is as you're in the process of doing it, be aware that the streaming part of it is an additional weight. There's more stuff for you to do. And so if you want to literally just do the DMing stuff, then yes, pitching something is really valuable. And by the way, let's just take a moment to talk about that before we get into the next, start talking about product review. But let's just talk about a moment about that. When we're pitching a show, Dot is very good at being able to say, all right, so here's what this is. It's this meets this. And I, as a writer, have had to do this all the time with my books, like Jason Bourne trained in 15th century Rome in the ways of sonic magic. That's Greyshade or whatever. Like this is what you have to do. So how would we suggest that people, if they wanted to pitch an idea for a game that they want to play, that they want to run, what's the focal point that they should have? If they're going to Gennaro tabletop streamer, anyone individually, how would you go about telling them, put your marketing hat on, how would you tell them this is how you pitch something that they would want to put on their channel? What would you have them focus on?
Okay, well, you need to know the channel, right? For example, if you're going over to Greyhawks to pitch a game, it needs to be D&D. Potentially in Greyhawk. If you're coming to me, don't pitch D&D because I'm not going to put it on my channel. Right. So that's just know who you're going to with your content. Yep. Okay. Know the channel. Do your research, right? Don't, as a writer, you're not going to write a book if a book that's similar to the one you're about to write has already been published.
If only that were true, Dot, that you're not going to do that.
I know, but it is a detriment, right?
No,
like,
of course.
don't come to me
100%.
and pitch an idea that I've seen a lot.
Exactly.
If you're pitching a fantasy game, and then I've got a lot of other pitches on my desk for more interesting concepts using different kinds of games set in different and more diverse settings, they're gonna, for at least for my channel, they're gonna get precedence because we've all seen a base level fantasy game. Don't come to me and for me, don't come to me and pitch, oh, well, I want to run Descent into Avernus.
Yeah.
Everybody's running Descent into Avernus. We have I, as a small scale streamer, have no leverage there.
Yeah.
Where, say, an all female Vikings game. Now tell me where else you're going to see that.
Exactly. If the little Dot is your source for female Vikings,
right?
Vikings
You know what I mean? It's like nobody else is doing that.
Right.
I don't even know anybody else that's using War C epilogues at the moment. So as horrible as it is, the unique edge of what you're pitching is a huge thing.
Yep.
Right? Because if it's something different, then people are going to want to watch it. They just don't want to watch things that they've seen a bajillion times over.
Right.
I
Especially
mean,
your
maybe
viewers too. I mean, who are used to that from you, like getting different kinds of games, and right. I mean, that your audience is going to want to see more different stuff because that's what you provide.
Yeah. So, but in that pitch, you need to, in my opinion, there are a few key things that need to be included. How many players you expect to have at your table?
Yep.
8 players, too many.
Yeah, too many.
Right? Pitch a game with no more than 5 players, people.
Yep.
No more than 5 players, because if you are a new GM, I'm only going to be able to put enough faith in you to know that you can manage 5 players at a table.
Yep.
Okay. So tell me immediately how many players you expect to have, how long you expect the campaign to be. It doesn't get a time change. You can't be like, oh yeah, it's 6 games, and then it turned out to be 10 games.
Mm-hmm.
You need to know your content and know how long you think the story is going to last. And be realistic. Don't pitch an 18-week game.
Yeah.
Most channels don't run games that long. They run on a seasonal basis, which is between 8 and 12 weeks. And you need to have your campaign and game pitch in a paragraph. If you can't tell me what your game is about within a paragraph, you don't actually have good enough handle on it. I don't need a giant backstory on the world that you built. That's not important for the pitch to my game.
Right.
You can just say original land or original world of blank blank. I'm going to know that you wrote that, and we can talk more about that later. I want to know, what themes are you playing with? What is this game about? Is it a thriller? Is it a horror game? What is the rating content on this? Is it PG-13? Because if it's R, I can't run it with a rent. I can't. There are certain times I can't run an R.
Right.
Right. Because
Sunday
my sponsors
Funday,
won't let it. Sunday Funday, not appropriate for R-rated material. Right. And I need to know if you're coming to the table with players already. And if these are your right.
Yep.
And if these are your best friendsies at home that have never done streaming before, do they all have cameras? Do they all have quality microphones?
Will they all repeatedly show up on time?
Will they all show up on time, dedicatedly?
Yeah.
This is another reason why I start paying people. Because when I pay you, they show up.
Yeah.
That's a whole other conversation. But there's that as well. And then that. So that pitch is basically, what kind of story are you telling? What system are you using? How many players do you need? And are they ready? Are they Twitch ready? Are they stream ready? And talk to me about the overall thematic story you want to tell. So let's see. I'll give you the pitch for my campaign, my Vikings campaign,
Lay it
right?
on me.
Heim uses the North Sea Epilogues, which is a brand new tabletop game put out by Renegade, based on a series of board games, has a huge following. Lots of checks there. The game that I want to tell is about a group of is about a single clan, 5 women from a single clan that are having to leave their home after winter has passed to pave a new path for their clan to move north. That is what it's about. It's about them finding a new home. And that's why I have called it Heim, which means home. So that's what it's about. It's about these 5 women leaving their home to pave out a new path so that their clan can follow them to a new home.
That's great.
That's it.
Yep.
The themes of it are sisterhood, family, loss, right? Vulnerability, all of those things. Give me keywords, but that's it. There it is. And the shortest, I guess I could give it to you.
Yeah, that's great. And,
That's
and
it.
it's just, and the thing about this is, the other thing I would say that I will what Dot said was great, so I asked her. I will add to that. Don't half-ass the pitch.
Yes.
And you want to be, now let me qualify what I just said. You want it to be what you're claiming that it is. So the classic is, don't compare every book that you've ever written to Harry Potter, because it's not, and it's not going to sell that way. And we've already seen 6 quadrillion books about Harry Potter that are not at all like Harry Potter and aren't nearly as good and whatever. Like, this is not that moment anyway for those kinds of, whatever. Don't pitch it that way. Pitch it as something which is like this meets this or whatever. And then once you know that what you're telling them is truthful, like that is what this is, then don't half-ass it. And by that I mean, don't try, if you're concerned, but if I tell them that it's this, but it's like this, then they might think that it's too specialized or it's too, if they think that, then the channel was not right for you to play this on in the first place. And there are many small streams and medium streams that have medium channels that have a variety of different interests and ideas and concepts and thoughts that are going to be useful for different things. Just as every game, not every game is going to appeal to every single person, so too every game pitch is not going to appeal to every single channel. But the idea is to not sort of be timid about the way that you present it. That pitch is a great, interesting pitch because it's very coherent, it's consistent, it's unusual, and it is very specific. So if I am a channel that does not want to have, shows about 5 women making it across the land, well, then I'm not going to take it. But the thing is that most people that have even kind of a basic kind of, I just like good role play, are going to want to take something like that because it's a fascinating story, which is not going to be the same story as your sweeping Mass Effect-ish space opera, which are going to run on Wednesdays instead of Mondays. So it's different than the stuff that's there, and not every game has to fulfill every function. But I would rather have a game which is distinctive and says, we're going to do this in this game, than a game that's like, well, we will generally have fun with each other and talk about
We're going to play
things.
a 5e fantasy campaign
right.
where we're leaving from a tavern. Well, you and literally 50%
Exactly.
of the RPG on Twitch.
Exactly. And this is the thing, the thing you said about Descent into Avernus is very much the situation when I started the Curse of Strahd campaign that I was thinking about with Tomb of Annihilation. I considered doing TOA, but everyone and their brother was doing TOA. So I'm like, why am I going to do more Tomb of Annihilation and be the 700th streamer doing that?
Right.
When I can be one of far fewer that are doing Curse of Strahd, which will frankly, even though I myself am not a big horror person, but I do love Gothic and I love spooky. So that to me was really part of it. And it provided great opportunities for role play if I could assemble the right, crew of people, the right players to do it, which definitely I did based on how wonderful the games have been. But that was another thing of trying to distinguish myself a little bit from what every other streamer was doing, and it's sort of picking the game properly. But the key here is to kind of lean into whatever it is. This is an all-female cast that is a group of Vikings that are trying to find their way home, and it's about loss and it's about sisterhood. That stuff is
And of
great.
course, they're called like Heimdall's Wolves, which is all about the gatekeeper to home for the Vikings.
That's
There's
great, yeah.
the concept of home and family. That's what it's all about.
It's really great, and that's the kind of thing that is going to appeal to a specific group, and that people are going to find that and want to sort of do that. And so being specific and being willing to lean into the explanation of what this is really what the game's trying to do and what it's not trying to do.
Right.
The game is not trying to become a sort of saga-driven, like
Fun games.
and it's right. It's Vikings and it's female and it's about trying to find a home for their clan. And immediately I have just images in my head of what that would look like. So,
right.
That's really the idea that you're trying to produce. So takeaway points here. Yes, you should consider doing it. You should definitely watch some of it. I mean, you're already watching this program, so I guess that, you already know a little bit about that. But you should be thinking about watching other streams and channels and shows like this. And you should watch a variety of them. The nice thing about having all the VODs that we have, not just YouTube, but on, Twitch itself with their VOD system, is you can search around and you can find a host of different types of games and watch just a bit of each of them to get a sense of stuff that really sort of appeals to you. And there may be some that, I know some people that I know Dot's a big fan of the vampire stuff. There are people who like Vampire the Masquerade that's their jam. And like, oh my God, if they find and once they find it, that's all I just love that. Or Shadowrun, my God, I've got to play Shadowrun. My God, it is the greatest thing. Or Blades in the Dark, it is the coolest thing ever. And that's awesome. It means that they can really kind of lean into it and produce something which is really exciting as a consequence of all of it. So consume widely, do your research widely. And then when you're ready to pitch, think about, out of the things that you've seen, what are you really excited to tell a story about? What world, what universe, what sort of game system really excites you? And yeah, getting some players on board with you who are willing to do that, so you can actually go to a stream, to a channel and say like, all right, I got 4 players. It's an 8 episode arc. I've got this and I can do it, these things. That's what the less work you leave the channel person to have to do to be like, how do I put all this in and schedule it? And then they know I just have to figure out how to do the back end production for this, the better. And it will excite them. It'll excite you, and the chance to kind of broaden out your skill and show this to an entire audience. So are we generally in agreement that in general live streaming is a positive overall, sort of taken as a whole?
I think it's positive for gaming in general.
Yeah.
In general. Yeah. Big cookie of all the gamings.
Of all the gamings in the world.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit then about product review. And I've got one right off, since you just said that thing about games. I have it sitting right next to me. So this game I got for Christmas. This is the Lord, and I played this once on stream, Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth. This game is awesome, and I'll tell you why. So this game is by Fantasy Flight. What a shock. It's a Fantasy Flight game in which you play one of 5 characters, and you can play a group of them. Usually they recommend, if you're just solo, you can play one person, that you play with at least 2 characters. And you adventure across Middle-earth engaged in one of several stories, and they have expansion campaigns. You can play more of them and so on. It is also partially app-driven. So just as they did with Mansions of Madness, Fantasy Flight has an app, which is free, which you can get on Steam or Android or iPhone, which basically lays out for you it shows you like the pieces of the board pieces that you can kind of lay out on a table or whatever the case may be, as I have been doing with this. And then it has the story go through. And the cool thing about it is it makes a lot of the fiddly stuff that you wouldn't necessarily want to do. It handles a lot of that. So it really manages a lot of the stuff that is sort of difficult. For example, a lot of people like Arkham Horror, but I defy you to find any person who's ever played a game of Arkham Horror board game who has not made a mistake somewhere in Mr. Rule. There's like literally that the manual is enormous. It's like, it is so fiddly that like it is so hard to play a game of that, even for experienced players, and not miss something. So this keeps you from having to worry about that situation. But the reason that I bring it up in this context is, first of all, the pieces are great. They're on point. Except in my edition, I got Aragorn with only one arm, and I am a little frustrated about that. And I contacted them, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we've got it." And then we're out of stock at the moment, and we're trying to get restocked.
Aragorn with one arm.
I have the one-armed Strider, which is like, I'm here for it, but like no though, like he's the son of Isildur, and then like he was like, you cut the ring off Sauron's hand, I'll cut my own arm off to compensate. Like, I don't know. Anyway, so it's the one-armed Aragorn. But anyway, that's just the action figure. But other than that, it's just the mini. But everything else in here is just like beautiful and on point, really cool maps, and lots of different equipment and cards and things like that. And you can grow and level and gain experience and knowledge and so forth as you go through the game. I played a lot of this over break. I had a really good time with it. And part of it is, yes, I'm a Lord of the Rings nut. So anything that involves that lore, I'm there for it. The more that they want to throw Erebor and Isildur and Anduin and like, I'll eat it all up with a spoon. I love this stuff. But also I just love the sort of feel of the matching of the technical quality of what the app provides, including music, to the physical kind of conditions of picking up and moving a mini around a board. And the one thing that what we do on here and what we talked about with streaming does not do is the tactile aspect of it is somewhat lost. And there is something to be said for the tactile quality of rolling a die, the tactile quality of moving a mini, the tactile quality of dressing up in cosplay, right? There's something to be said for the feel of it. And that's something which I think this captures really, really well. I am a huge fan of this. I played this on stream. I just set up a webcam to basically show different pictures of it. And it was great. Like, I really enjoyed it. And it was unusual because it's not just combat. It was about deciding like which factions to support in particular things. And they did it really, really well. The only problem with this is it's pricey because it's Fantasy Flight. So this is like, I think this was like $70. And now you get a lot of hours of play, but once you've played, and you get a lot of replayability because you can play it with 1 to 5 people, each of which has kind of a different element to the experience. And because it randomizes how the map is played out in a given scenario, it means that there's a little more replayability also. But still, the story is the story. The expansion campaigns are much cheaper. The ones that don't involve any new pieces are like, I don't know, $6-7, which give you each another 8 to 10 hours of play, which is pretty good. But if you're going to get another big board game expansion, I heard that they have another one that they're going to release. That's probably another $50-60. So it's definitely not cheap, I will admit. But I love the fact that it is, first of all, cooperative. Secondly, that it's tied in so well to Lord of the Rings and it leans into that. And then third of all, that it marries the technical quality of the app with the tactile quality of the physical game. So I am a huge fan. And I'm just saying, Fantasy Flight, if you're looking for more people to, if you're looking for some, medium level, like tabletop streamers that, author that loves Lord of the Rings and you want to have it sponsor. I mean, I'm just saying, I'm happy to do that stuff. Anyway, but no, I love this game and I'm a huge fan. So anyway, that's what I wanted to rave about, was how cool this was. So Dot, tell me what cool, I know it's a board game, but it's close enough. Like it ties in what we were talking about. So
very much. And minis and stuff. Yeah, totally.
And minis. So good. I have to show you One-Armed Aragorn, but while I'm getting that out, you tell me.
I want to see One-Armed Aragorn.
Oh my God. So tell me about what you've got for a product review.
Oh, let's see. So many things. Okay, well, so many things. Okay, well, I feel like since the last time I was on here, my Fate of Cthulhu book came through. Look how pretty and shiny my new Fate of Cthulhu book. It's freaking beautiful. This book is beautiful. Evil Hat has never had a problem with like layouts and doing amazing jobs, but this one in particular really just like look at that art.
That's
look at that.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
pretty sick.
Fantastic. So I feel like I've talked about this game before, so I won't do a full-on product review, but just know that Dot has her hands on her hard copy.
But it's
very
actually beautiful,
Dot.
So confirmed. Okay.
Very happy, Dot. Let's see. Well, I just got my first peek at the new Fate Condensed.
Okay, yep.
Which we kind of talked about before the show, but there is, for all of you at home that have ever been a little intimidated by the Fate core system, or felt like you just didn't quite grasp it, guess what? You're not the only one. So now, Evil Hat has put out a condensed. It's not accelerated, which is like the super duper light. Condensed is somewhere in the middle. And condensed is great for those of you that want to write content for Fate, like self-published content that uses Fate. But it does a better job in like 60 pages instead of like 280 pages explaining Fate and the use of Fate. And to go along with it, they have updated the sheet inside of Roll20. So there's
nice.
a new Fate system sheet in Roll20 that also matches.
And by the way, let's just say, by the way, that is also becoming a necessity. We were talking about the whole online experience, like Roll20 / somewhat Fantasy Grounds. I'm more of a Roll20 guy, but that integration with online stuff is becoming increasingly a big deal for people. So.
So that's another one that's like out there. I have a couple other by Evil Hat that I haven't had a chance to really dive into, but that have come out since the first of the year. 3 of them, in fact. They're putting one in development right now, which I'm really excited about, called Thirsty Sword Lesbians.
That one I have not.
Pretty much exactly what you expect. Thirsty Sword Lesbians is still in development, but they're doing open play testing, or they did it through the end of January, so we should be getting like first round Kickstarter for Thirsty Sword Lesbians. But basically, it's just what it sounds like. It's basically like they Thirsty Sword Lesbians battle the Lady of Chains. It's kind of the like conflict that's happening. It happens in space, so they kind of like travel through the stars and they safeguard diplomats and stuff like that. They all use swords. Surprise. Just what it sounds like. It's a queer RPG game. Very queer. But I'm very excited about it.
Okay.
Let's see, there's another one that's out called Girl by Moonlight, which is now Evil Hat's official like Magic Girls game. So like if you really want to get your you really, you know, I don't know, you want to go be a magic girl, you can do that. It uses Forged.
Okay.
So if you like the Forged in the Dark system, Magic Girls uses Forged in the Dark system. Yeah, it's just it's your Sailor Moon style Magic Girls game, but
Speaking
it's
of cosplay.
yeah, right. It kind of explores, you know, that level of like defense and redemption and heartbreak and all the Magic Girl stuff that you would go through.
And you know, that could actually do, given the sort of effect that a lot of these, I was just thinking about like the huge, for some, and I mean, I know these games have always been around, but there just seems to be this enormous rise of interest in games like Persona and like Persona 5 and like a lot of these things now that these are tapping into. So I bet that's the kind of thing that would have some kind of mainstream appeal actually, as these things come out. So, okay, so you said there were 3. So
yes, so that one, and then the last one, which I believe is actually out now for early PDF release, is called Demi-Humans. And this is for those people that like post-apocalyptic stuff. So this uses Apocalypse World is the base for this one. And it's kind of like it's like a golden age of like wonders. That's ruled by this group called Those Who Came Before, which are basically beings who kind of brought magic and kind of the ancient era into, you know, wonders and things of that nature into it. And you're basically playing magical people that are sustaining a community in the face of extinction during the apocalypse. So you actually, as a group, my understanding is you like manage a community, a small community of people trying to outlast in a dying world.
Very cool. That reminds me a little bit of the one that Grant Ellis kickstarted, or not that he kickstarted, that he was involved in at some point. He was a stretch goal for them, and it was basically it was like Shadow of the Colossus, the RPG. This was last year, and I can't remember what it was. But there's a whole aspect where you're managing a same thing. You're managing a village in between while fighting the Colossus and all that stuff.
Oh, here we go. Okay, this is what it says. The magical spark of the impossible that was set burning in the Golden Age is a mere guttering ember now, as we live our lives under the human boot heel. So you're playing a demi-human. You're like a demigod,
okay.
Right? So it's a standalone RPG inspired by Apocalypse World, where you play members of an enclave, a small community or a subordinate in a human city of magical, non-human people who are trying to endure and thrive as magic is dying out.
Okay, cool. Also reminds me a little of Clay That Woke. Okay, cool. That's very neat.
I feel like they've got all kinds of other things too. Like, you know, I'm all behind Fate's put out an accessibility toolkit for those of you that have players at your table that want their characters and you want your table to become more accessible. This toolkit is amazing.
Wow.
It talks about working with people from just all backgrounds, from like, you know, the deaf to the blind, to simply making your table accessible to people that may have a character that has a handicap, or some kind of other accessibility need. Like, it's supreme.
Wow,
the accessibility toolkit is supreme. And there was another one that they put. Oh yes, Starfighter Academy. That's the other one. Evil Hat's
right. I think I've heard about that. Well, I mean, Evil Hat's been doing, you know, back to the accessibility. Evil Hat's been doing good stuff on that front for a long time. So that doesn't surprise me that they're you know, they've been trying to work towards being more accessible, and they're on that side of the industry in a positive way. So that's good. So all right, good stuff. So here we go. I'll show. And by the way, yeah, Coven, that is pretty awesome. Wirelessly charged Bluetooth dice that can connect to your computer and roll 20. That's pretty sweet. Like, if that, and I feel like I might have seen
that's $1
something
million
like that before.
idea, sir.
Yeah, go do that right now, and then please cut me in for 1% of the profits. All right.
Right. Absolutely. I don't have a lot of money to invest, but I'll invest some.
Yes, that's badass. Like, that's really cool. You should. I'm serious. You should 100% do that. I have a feeling that there's a whole group of people that would be like, hell yes, please let me do that. That'll be sweet. All right, here we go. So we have this guy who is the hill troll that you repeatedly battle throughout the adventure, and then you finally take him out towards the end. So standard hill troll, and apparently having lost his arm to the hill troll, Strider of the One Arm, da 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 da. And I remember I pulled it out of the thing, and I'm like, wait, what? And I look back, I'm like, that's not right. And so I sent them a picture of it, and they're like, oh yeah, totally our fault. We'll send you a new one. And then, sorry, we don't have any more of that. I'm like, you are out of Aragorns. You're out of Strider. You're telling me that you have lost one of the Dunedain. I'm joking. I'm just waiting for them to get. I better get a badass.
Shame.
I'd like you to paint my actual armed Aragorn, okay?
It better be the buffest arm, the sexiest mini arm.
It's true. That's true. This is basically this is Viggo Mort. It's not Morten Sen. He doesn't have the full, the full mix, the full combination of the full arm. But anyway, so it's good stuff. I dig it. And your brain start checking pricing on wireless charging coils and Bluetooth receivers. Dig it. I love it. I love it. I can't wait to see more about it. All right, chat. So time for our section where we talk a little bit about AMA. So now is your chance to ask us any questions that you might have. So throw some questions at us if you have got any game-related things, mastering ideas. I have this situation where I'm playing a game, but this guy only wants to play a dragon that rides a bicycle. How do I handle this player? Anything you have that might be along those lines, please lay them on us. Please just do it by typing in question in all caps, and then you can give us what that question is, and we will take a few before we wrap up the show. So throw us some questions. It can be anything about the industry or about dungeon mastering or game mastering that we have talked about at the moment. Does this already exist, Light? Is that what you're saying?
They're called Go Die.
Go Dice? Right, if they don't have a working
Go
prototype.
Dice, connected dice, incredibly smart dice.
Yeah, but those are just words. Does it work? That's the question.
Okay. So there's an Indiegogo for it. Okay, there's an Indiegogo for it. I'm looking this up while all of you think of your questions.
I wonder if it's funded.
Roll your dice, tap your decisions, and watch your score rise in real time. But the real question is, it looks like it goes with all these other games like Yahtzee and all these games, but they're not actually connected to Roll20, which makes them
right, not integrated with Go20.
And here's the thing: the Go dice are all D6s, and you have to buy specialty shell casings to make them D20s and other die.
Aha,
and right now,
see?
all they have is the D20 fitted for it, no other die. Basically, this is for people that want to play Yahtzee on their phone.
Right, and you can also tell that because it says Go Dice is the Kindle of board games. Okay, why would you? That is like being the Reader's Digest of magazines. Like, what? What is your demographic? Go Dice is the Pinto, is the 1988 Ford Taurus of car. Like, why would you want to be the Kindle of board games? No, you got this, man. It's no problem. You got it. You can do it. You can do it right now. All right. First question. I'm of course joking. These people are probably like horrified and like, why are you attacking us? I'm sure Go Dice is wonderful, but I still think that you can manage. I still think you got it, Coven. I still think you got this. So Kayla Evil asks, question, any ideas for involving a player who is naturally quiet and not very talkative in a game without constantly prodding them? I do have ideas about that, but I will let Dot get first crack at this if she wants. How do you get a naturally quiet, not very talkative player more engaged? And I should say, this is assuming, by the way, that they're not engaged, because it is quite possible, certainly is the case with players and students, that some still waters run deep. And there are times when those who are not participating seemingly are very much engaged and are just sort of quieter. So, but assuming that you feel like they're just kind of hanging back and not doing what you need them to do, then how would you engage them more?
Okay, so if they are engaged, meaning that like they're at the table, they're listening, but they're not role playing, which is a lot of GMs take silent role playing to mean they're not engaged. It just means they're not engaging like other players. I had a fantastic GM and friend tell me one time that not everybody role plays in first person. Mm-hmm. That sometimes it is necessary for a GM to look at a quiet player at the table and say, how is your character feeling in this moment?
Yes.
I'm a big role player, I wear everything on the cuff of my sleeve. And as an improviser, I talk a lot out loud because I know that that's sometimes what the audience needs. But if you're in a game and you have somebody that's quiet, my first question to them, if I feel like the role playing is not bringing it out of them, or who knows, they could be playing a character that's really quiet and keeps to themselves. Asking them how their character is feeling in the moment sometimes is the right prompt to have them say, oh, my character is feeling really overwhelmed. Well, they may not speak if they're overwhelmed,
Right.
or my character is dealing with some internal trauma that the rest of the party doesn't know about. Okay, now we've given a clue to the rest of the players that their energy needs to shift, because now maybe we have a visual cue for them to include that player. That is always my first thing, is when was the last time you asked that quiet player how their character is feeling in the moment?
That's a good one. I would agree with that. Making sure that there are moments that can actually center that player's character. And by that, I do not mean necessarily putting a spotlight on them, but I mean, are there moments where, you know, player one is doing this, character one's doing this, character two is doing this. The third character, you know, the blacksmith in the town that you're at, may come up and say, you know, that's, you know, I like the steel greaves that you wear. Where'd you get those? You know, something like that, where it feels as if the character is engaging. And it doesn't feel, it's difficult sometimes to do this without, you don't want to come across as, I'm trying to engage you now. Like, you don't want to sound like that. But if you have something where there's a real connection that could exist between a character or an NPC, it's sometimes helpful to give that a try. Especially if you can do that on several different axes. Part of what a good GM needs to do, and I've talked about this over and over again, is to shut up and watch your players, because there are times when your players will clearly be more engaged in one thing than they are in another. And if you are too busy kind of droning on and going up here, and you don't pay attention to the response that you're getting, then it means that you may lose a chance for someone to kind of jump in. It may be that, you know, your storyline about having to clear out and, you know, explore an evil temple is not interesting to them. But when they find this one place where there is a library which, you know, is running the risk of being burned to the ground, that's the thing that their character really cares about, because they happen to love reading books and because their father read them books when they were a child, and they want to be able to preserve some of this lore for future generations. That may be the thing that fires them up. And in that scenario, you need to be ready to roll with that. This is perhaps the most important aspect of thinking about improvising as it turns to GMing, is not for me about the voice or the character. It's about your ability to emphasize different elements of the adventure as needed based upon player interest. So there's a particular thing that happens or a particular area that they're really excited about, play the area up for the love of God. If they happen to love an NPC and for whatever reason it was just an NPC you just threw in, but they just are like, oh my God, this NPC, then you got to play up the NPC. You've got to make that NPC a bigger part of things, and they will end up thinking you're a genius because they're like, oh my God, I can't believe it was such a great NPC, and at first it seemed like they were nothing, but I was so happy that they became a bigger part of the game. You don't think we're taking notes and being like, note to self, they really love this, or this NPC they really hated, and I don't mean hated like they was tedious, but there was like a real villain that they could kind of get their teeth into. Awesome. Guess who's going to make a return appearance? Is that bastard, you know, at some point later in the adventure. So
I tell them, I say that all the
really
time. Listening is your job as the GM.
Yeah.
You should come to the table with your world developed. Your job is to listen and react.
And to be able to go, and again, and one of the things that is sometimes helpful for that is, if you know, to go back to Dot's point about pitching themes, if you know what the themes of your campaign are, if you know that I want my campaign to be about the price of power, the need for sacrifice, the desire for community, like whatever those main sort of touchstone themes are, it means that so long as the elements you're emphasizing connect back to those main themes, then who cares if they were like fifth on the list of things you were thinking about as opposed to first? Who cares if they don't go to the big obvious temple, if instead they're going along with something which will still tie back to the themes that you wanted to produce for your game? So that really is the biggest thing, is to be responsive to the players. And to go back to the initial question, if you can engage the player when they are ready to be engaged, and again, watching will really help that can be valuable. Also, conversations after the game, just in private, are always valuable. You know, it's always valuable to be able to say, hey, I just want to make sure how you're feeling about this. How are you connecting to things? And again, not assuming that just because they're not talking doesn't mean they're not engaged. Trendane is an example of a guy
Yep.
who often plays characters that are quiet, and sometimes people sort of misinterpret that, but Tren is extraordinarily engaged all the time, and a lot of times they'll come over and they'll ask what he's doing, and he's praying at that moment, or he's preparing a spell, or he's doing something else, and the players all know this now. They know that this is what he does, and he'll definitely talk when he needs to, but the experience of seeing someone who is engaged without having to constantly talk is really wild. And yeah, that the point that Dodd made about asking how the characters feel is really, really important. I would agree with that.
Some characters feel a lot more than they talk.
So I'm GMing for the first time in ages tomorrow. I'm so nervous, but it's a year of getting over my fears. Yeah, I mean, one point I would make just generally, Kayleevel, about this is just a general comment. It's the case with public speaking, with anything performative, but it also definitely is the case with gaming. Your players want you to succeed.
Yes.
They are waiting for you to succeed. They are excited for you to succeed. They want to have a great story. So they are rooting for you. They are not waiting for you to faceplant. They are not waiting for you to screw up. So you don't need to think, oh my God, they're waiting for me to make the one moment. They're not actually waiting for that. They're waiting to be excited. So if you can just remember that and realize that they are likely to give you a whole lot of slack because you're telling them a story and you're the GM and you get to tell them the story and they get to live this adventure. That's all you need. They will be willing to work with you. If you have normal, regular people that are playing with you, they will be willing to work with you. So one thing to remember is that they are waiting for you to succeed. And as long as you remember that, then you're more likely to actually succeed just because you will have produced a story they care about. So let's see. Hated like you hate Vader, not like you hate Jar Jar. That's such a good comment, Coven. Exactly right. You hate Vader because of what he is in the world. You hate Jar Jar because what is this stupid character doing in this
It's
movie?
no purpose.
What is the purpose of this other than to sell a bunch of toys, right? That's exactly
Bring
the
in a
difference
younger
between-
audience.
Exactly. Yeah, they're normal. So that's it, Kaylee. Like they're normal, regular people. My experience is that when you DM for people that haven't done it before, even or they're not that experienced, they love it. Oh my God. They're like, this is the greatest thing. Oh my God, this is so awesome. They will immediately think that you are a god to them. Even if you're stumbling over lines, who cares? Like
They're all there to have fun.
they're all there to have fun. Yeah.
And as long as you're having fun, they will too.
Yep. So just enjoy it. Enjoy the experience.
And I'll tell you what I tell every first time GM. If you've GM'd once, you've only GM'd once. There's always the next time.
Yep, exactly. And you'll always have a time to GM better the next time if need be. And also, you will often find that you have GM'd better than you thought you did. Like, you may think, like, I really messed up this, and this, and they'll be like, that was awesome. They will have no idea many times that you messed up a particular story arc or character development. How the hell would they know? I mean, it's your story. You know what's happening. They don't know what's happening. So, as long as you respect the players and respect their characters, and as long as you have fun, that's going to be the big thing. They all want to experience Vampire for the first time. Still, though, but that's fine too. If they're experienced GMs, they're going to cut you slack because they know how goddamn difficult it is to GM and game master. And if they get to experience Vampire the first time, I mean, Dot can speak to this as a Vampire player. I feel like when you first do that, it sounds to me everyone always plays it as just so pumped up by being in the world that almost right, Dot. I mean, that just kind of carries you along. It seems to me for a lot of it, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, if you're excited about being a storyteller for VTM, everybody else is just going to hop on board. How do you think we got where we are at Roll For It? It's because Mathis came to the table with just like this desperate love. Mathis is really not, he hasn't GM'd that much in his lifetime. And look at what a great storyteller he is. And it's because he loves the lore of VTM.
Yeah.
And his love of the lore has made me love the lore and has turned me into a diehard fan.
Yep.
It's about that energy and the passion that a GM brings to the table. You're not always going to have the answers. It's okay to say, I don't know.
Right.
Or can I take a second on that? Or I need to look something up. All those things are valid because they're necessary. And if you are the facilitator, as I like to really call GMs, because that's what you are, you're facilitating the table. We recognize that facilitator holds a lot more responsibility. And like Arf said, because of that, we are lenient and understanding as you are learning and we are learning and you are trying to guide us through it. It's like, we're not going to backseat drive. or just not.
Nope.
We just want you to get us where we're going.
Yep, exactly.
You know,
That's all.
take whatever path you want. We trust you. Just get us there.
That's right. That's right. And you know, I've said a million times, the best part is where I just get to sit back and watch. I just get to sit back and watch a game,
Yep.
and how that's the best. Hell yes, oh, see, this is a compliment to you, Dot. I blame you guys and that show for that excitement, it says, in a very, very good way.
Oh, good.
See?
Well,
So
bring a little darkness into your life, baby.
anything I can do to inspire you to be immortal, so to speak. Don't let them know you missed insert story thing right after. Don't let them know they missed insert story thing. Exactly. You just don't need to let them see the seams. You know, from the outside, they will very, very seldom know what's going on the outside, because you have a 30,000 foot view of the world that they do not have. Another way to think of it is they are interested in playing their character, and to a lesser extent playing their character as a part of a group. You are interested in having all of the characters interact with each other and the story. So they are not going to know that you missed having the kobold shoot from the ambush with the Blobita 6, whatever.
Yeah.
They're not going to, they're not going to know that. You will. And so don't beat
Yeah.
yourself up about it. And by the
don't
way,
beat yourself up.
and
Yep.
and be great, and thank you for being a DM, GM,
Yes.
game master, because we need more game masters, and honestly, in our space. And so thank you for doing it, because it really, this is the, we're the
It's
ones
a
who make-
responsibility that not everybody wants.
exactly, but everybody needs it.
But everybody needs it. Yeah, exactly.
So they need us. So welcome to the crew. So, all right. Well, this was great, but we should probably wrap up because we're at right about the 9:00 hour. So I will say, as always, it was wonderful to have Dot back with us. And I will ask Dot if there is anything specific that you want to kind of promo about stuff that's coming up soon. They need to look at on your channel, etc.
Yes, of course. Tuesday night, 7:00 Eastern Standard Time over on the Dot Lot. That's twitch.tv/little_red_dot. We are launching the premiere of Heim, a North Sea Epilogues campaign, full of some very passionate ladies. I'm serious. I'm not exactly sure how I managed to wrangle all these incredible female role players into a schedule where they can all work together, but hot dog. I'm really excited. And honestly, one of the things I think I'm most excited for is none of them have, originally the campaign was going to be called Valkyries because, well, I expected everybody to want to be like a warrior. And the fact of the matter is none of them chose a warrior.
That's super cool. That's super
So
cool.
we're also coming at this. I've been doing a lot of research into, Vikings and Norse mythology. So it'll be a little bit of both. It'll be kind of like light fantasy wrapped up in a lot of more of his like historical stuff of that time.
Okay.
Excuse me, but yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm very excited to like look at a Viking campaign from a perspective of people of a clan and not just the warriors.
Yeah.
Because this whole clan they're not a warrior clan. It's actually one of the cool things about the game is you get to build your clan, and part of it is like, what is your clan great at? And our clan are craftsmen and farmers.
Oh, neat.
They're
Yeah,
not
I love
warriors.
that. I love that group construction thing. Eberron
Yeah.
does the stuff with this too, with group patrons and things. I love the idea of working together as a group, as a collective, to produce a story for that group. That's neat too. So
Yeah. So, anyways, I'm very excited about it. This should be a really, really interesting one. All the girls have interesting backstories and different roles. I think we have. What do we have? Well, we've got a tracker.
okay,
We do have a berserker, but the berserker's really interesting because they're not considered like proper warriors. They actually live on the outskirts of the clan in nature.
okay,
So it's almost like a druid fighter. It's like the way the build is they
Okay.
connect with nature on like a deep way. So they live in nature.
okay.
So you've got tracker, berserker, skald.
Okay.
We've got a skald, a proper skald.
Outstanding.
We've got a carpenter, and we've got, who am I forgetting? Carpenter, berserker. Oh, and a seer. I've got a seer too,
Oh.
which is going to be very cool. So we've got somebody that kind of can see premonitions and is into the more mystic side of like the Norse history. So
Very cool.
yeah, that we're actually going to start out with a vision from the seer that this extended like 9-month winter is finally passing. They are our groundhog. They get the first vision of new spring, which is why the clan needs to move, because the larger and more hostile clans will be coming out of the mountains as the snow melts.
That's super cool. And how long? How many sessions? You got
Only
for?
5 weeks.
Okay.
So I run mini campaigns. So 5 weeks, 2-hour sessions. So you'll get a 10-hour kind of campaign.
Okay.
But I'm very excited. It's got some cool stuff. And like I said, the mechanisms are really interesting. It's a D20 system. Everything is D20 with modifiers. And the role system functions a little bit like Cypher, where like the GM sets a level at which you have to reach. And then you say, okay, here's what I've got to go with it. And depending on what you have, and if people are helping you, it may drop and drop or go up, and those kind of things. And then you're just trying to hit a target number. So very neat. It will literally be my first time ever playing and GMing this game. So please, audience, be kind to me. As I learn it, my players learn it because it's brand new, and it doesn't have a Roll20 build. So we are just using, quick keys, basically macros inside of Roll20. So, but that being said, we're still all very excited, and I have a feeling it's going to be a lot more story based than role based. So.
Very cool. So that's this Tuesday at 7?
This Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Dot Live.
Awesome. Good stuff, Dot. Thank you. Always, again, really great pleasure to do this. And you will, of course, see Dot back on this channel as I have, she does a couple things.
He's absconded with me.
Yes, I have done this. Listen, I just gave you, I led you to water and you drank a bunch of times.
So let me tell you what, this is what Arv does. He comes to me and he's like, hey, so I got this show. We only meet like once a month. But then he does it like 3 or 4 times, so that I end up in like every day.
This is your fault. If you thought my stuff sucked, you wouldn't do it. This is the problem. Because I said, I'm like, how about you play, a shape-changing druid who is one with nature, and you get to play in Strahd, and you were like, well, see? So I was just like, ha.
Okay. Fine. Fine.
And also, as I've always said, if you were just crappier at what you do, then I wouldn't ask you.
Note
so
to self, be crappier.
Just get worse. Yeah, just be worse at your job and
be bad at what you do.
And it'll be that. But you will see Dot as a wonderful voice actress, wonderful role player, and a good all-around person. So I'm very happy to have her on here. You will see her for Infinity and Beyond. You will see her for Our Vocalist, and you will also see her for Masters of the Dungeon. And I was looking at the sort of setup, and I thought at first, I'm like, oh, we must have not done it in, like in January, but we did just at the end of January, and then we're obviously doing this on a leap year day, February 29th. So we just managed to fit it in. So we have been able to be consistent. And this is episode 24. So it's been 2 full years of Masters of the Dungeon content that we've done on here. So very, very exciting. So I'm glad you're a part of it. So thank you very much, Dot. Chat, can we get some love for Dot on this? And yes, definitely go check out on Tuesdays on her channel at 7 p.m. Eastern. You should be following her anyway, but make sure you go do that. And Dot, always a pleasure. Thank you so much. And I will be in touch with you soon.
Bye.
Bye. And that's that. So good stuff. As I say, I joke around, with her about what I got, what I managed to kind of get her involved with. But it's true. I mean, she's a really fun role player and really good at what she does. Has just and very good, obviously, on the improv side of things, and has really fit in really well with everybody in the Infinity and Beyond campaign. And of course, as a co-host here and as a member of the Our Vocalist. So I'm very happy and lucky to have her. So thank you, Dot, so much. All right. With that said, though, the time has come for us to switch gears here a little bit. So what I am going to do as I fire up my webcam here, where are we? Webcam, show me webcam. There's webcam. There we go. So what I am going to do here is I am going to take a quick break and I am going to get set up for the next thing, which is going to be Operencia. We're going to be playing Operencia, which is a game I was playing last night. It's a super cool game, really fun, dungeon crawl, all this kind of good stuff. So I'm going to switch up with that, and I'm going to do that after about 5 minutes. So if you have been hanging out for Masters of the Dungeon, thank you so much. I am actually going to stop the recording just so we can have this set, and then I'm going to pause for a moment, then I'm going to start recording, and then I will go on break. And when I come back from it, we will play ourselves some Operencia. So thank you, everyone who is here for Masters of the Dungeon. You can find all of the ones that we've done here over on my YouTube channel on that playlist, and I will see all of you lovely folks from Masters of the Dungeon soon. Bye for now. Don't everyone else leave, just those folks who are leaving. Bye for now.